Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We're delighted to have you here this afternoon for the Q&A for the Dress and Textile History Masters Programme at the University of Glasgow. I'm Dr. Sally Tuckett. I'm one of the co-conveners of the programme, so I'm here today to give you some brief background information to the programme. But I'm delighted that we are joined also by Dr. Sabina Bieber, who is also the co-convener for the programme. And we've got two current students, Hannah and Rebecca. So I'll let them introduce themselves to you as well. And then I'll give you some brief information about the programme, and then we can get cracking with your questions. So Sabina, do you want to say a bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon to talk a little bit about the program and hopefully answer your questions. I'm the co-convener of the program. I'm a trained design historian, and I'm particularly interested in looking at tapestries and embroidery. And my time period is sort of the late 19th into the 19th century into the 20th century. And Central Europe is sort of my area of specialism. So that's me. I'll pass the baton on.
Hannah, I think over to you.
Fab. So hi, I'm Hannah. I'm one of the current students on the program, as Sally mentioned. And I'm also an international student, so I've come all the way from Sydney. So hello to anyone watching from Australia. It's probably quite late right now. And my main area of study is the 19th century.
Rebecca.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm not sure I'm still on mute or not. No.
We can hear you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I am from currently West Sussex in England, so here in the UK. I'm on taking the program full time, and my main interest is sort of 18th century women's history in the context of dress and textiles.
Wonderful, thank you, everybody. So, as I said, Sabina and I are the co-conveners of the programme. The other core teaching member is Professor Leslie Miller, who until recently was Senior Curator of Textiles at the V&A in London. She can't be here this afternoon, but hopefully if there's any pertinent questions to her that we can't answer, we will forward them on to her. Now, hopefully, a lot of you have already seen the website that gives information about the programme and what we cover. If you haven't, please do take a look at it. I understand that a lot of you might have offers already, so we're aware that there may be a range of questions from the application process up to what is happening in the year ahead. We can really answer, we'll answer as much as we can, and I'll just say a little bit about what we've got in store so far for you. Everything is still in the planning stages. So some of this may change, but some of it will also become clearer as we go along across the course of the summer. So if you have seen our webpage, you will know that this is a program that looks at the history of dress and textiles. And we pride ourselves on the fact that we incorporate textiles and dress. Not many programs or courses do both of these. So we look at 2D and 3D objects, and we look at them in their wider historical context. So we have 6 courses that you will need to take over the year to complete the program. You have to complete 180 credits to get the Masters in Dress and Textile History. And that includes 6 courses that are 20 credits each. You will do 3 courses each semester. So it's over 2 semesters. And then once those are completed, you'll move on to the dissertation stage, which, as you heard from Hannah and Rebecca, that can be anything ranging from 19th century masculinity to 18th century women's wear in Scotland, 20th century fashion plates, and everything in between. The taught components of the program, which happen in semester 1 and semester 2, are based on 6 courses. 3 of those are core courses that everybody has to take. And in semester 1, those courses are research methods and skills. And this is a course which looks at history of art research methods. It's team taught. It brings together expertise from across our department. So you get to meet a range of people that aren't necessarily dress and textile history related, but it gives you a real good sense of what else is going on within the department. Also, importantly, gives you a chance to meet other students from other programs. So that's one of the core courses. The second core course, which is dress and textile history specific, is framing dress and textile histories. And this is a really important ground laying course for everybody to take. We understand that most students have not necessarily studied dress and textile history in a formal academic setting. So this course helps everybody get onto the same page. We look at the history of dress and textiles historiographically, if that makes sense, starting from the beginning in the early 20th century, how it began with object-based studies and collectors, connoisseurs who are really interested in learning about historical dress by collecting objects. And we then move right forward up to fashion theory, gender theory, and how you can use these methodologies to understand dress and textile history. So it really helps lay the foundation for the rest of the year. The other core course is in semester 2, and that's called Applying Dress and Textile Histories, and that's run by Savina Weber. So if you have more questions about that, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. And that builds off on framing, but the basic premise of that course is to introduce you to people who use dress and textile histories in a variety of different contexts. So we have a range of academics, we have costume designers, we have people that have incorporated dress and textiles into museum exhibitions. It changes every year, so it's a really exciting and vibrant course. Those are the 3 core courses. We then have, you will then be able to choose 3 optional courses. And again, Savina can talk about Victorian Visions, which we know will be running in semester 2. And I can tell you a bit about Fabrics of a Nation, Scottish Dress and Textile Histories, which is running in semester 1. And that's, as the title says, a look at the Scottish dress and textile histories. And it's a chance to really engage with some of the fantastic resources that we have right on our doorstep. Scotland has a really vibrant textile history. It's not all just tartan, although tartan is obviously very close to my heart as a tartan historian myself. But there is much more out there. We look at the textile manufacturing industry in Scotland, but also how textiles are used in terms of fashion, identity, and social and economic status. So that gives us a chance to look at things that are in the Paisley Museum, which is just down the road, Glasgow museums. We also work really closely, National Museums of Scotland, National Portrait Gallery, the V&A Dundee. We draw on as many of these regional and national collections as we can to help us really understand the context of that historical period. So it covers mainly the 18th and 19th century. Now, there are various other optional courses that are going to be available, and we'll be able to confirm them more specifically as the summer goes on, but we will have some work placements. Everyone's always really keen to know about work placements. These will be competitive. Not everybody will be able to do a work placement. It depends on how many we can accumulate over the course of the year. We're very reliant on the host institutions being able to support them. But I can tell you that this year we had placements in Mount Stewart, which is a stately home on the Isle of Bute, and which Hannah conducted as part of her studies. We have placements with Paxton House, which is another stately home in the Borders, where Rebecca did her work placement. But we also had projects going with National Museums of Scotland. And to be honest, others have completely gone out of my mind. I'm sure Hannah and Rebecca will be able to help me out with that one in a second. But these will be available, and there will be some available, and we'll let you know at the beginning of semester 1. The timetable for that. Work placements will happen in semester 2. If you don't want to do work placements, then there are plenty of other options. We have courses that are being offered by the Textile Conservation Programme. So the Dress and Textile Histories Masters and the Textile Conservation Programme are part of the Kelvin Centre for Conservation and Cultural Heritage Research here at the University of Glasgow. We work really closely together. Our classes happen in the same building and in the same area. You'll meet some of the textile conservation staff as part of Framing Dress and Textile Histories. And they offer 2 courses throughout the year, which our students can take part in. And that's called Understanding Textiles. And then the second one is Material Cultures. You are also able to take courses within History of Art in general. It's a really vibrant and wide-ranging community. So if there is a course there that appeals to you as one of your options, then you can simply talk to myself or Sabina as you are selecting these courses, and we can see if that's a possibility for you. Now, I realise that I've now been talking for an extended period of time, so I don't know if there are any questions in the chat there. I can see one from Romain. Thank you, Romain. I would love to know to what extent the programme courses are solely UK focused and how much room there is for studying dress history in other regions or a wider geographical context. It's a great question. Maybe we could bring back Sabina onto the screen as well to help answer this one, because I can certainly say from my perspective, there is a lot of Scottish and British focus. So in Framing and Fabrics of a Nation, obviously, which is based on Scottish dress and textile history, that is mainly British focused, but that doesn't preclude a global element. Scotland has global textile networks, as Hannah and Rebecca will be able to attest to. And Sabina will be able to talk about what she does with Victorian visions as well. So Sabina, would you like to?
So I'll quickly address that question, and then I would love to actually have Hannah and Rebecca's take on this as well, because I think one of the real strengths of the program is that we are working with local collection, with grounding ourselves in the city of Glasgow, in Scotland, in the UK. So that's our starting point. But for myself, for example, as you can tell by my accent, I'm German. I work on Austrian and German material. So even though I teach a course that's called Victorian Visions, for example, I draw on local collections and archives and holdings, but I stretch that term very widely to bring a more international perspective in. So what I would say to this question, Romain, which is really a great question, is that probably the methodological tools and the kind of scholarship starts within a British context, but then you can go off as both a student and myself as a tutor into a much more international context. And that's why I would like to bring Hannah in and Rebecca in, because I think both their work is so wonderfully exemplary of what they've done with some of the tools, as I call them, that they got in our courses. So yes, we start with a British context, but we are very much international in outlook, in terms of looking towards North America, looking towards continental Europe, for lack of a better word, maybe even looking to China. So I'll maybe let Hannah have, and then Rebecca have their take on what they would say we do in that context.
Sure, it's a really good question, and I think in terms of while the courses, as Sally and Sabina mentioned, have more of a British and Scottish focus, there is the ability with some of the assignments to broaden that geographic scope. So in a lot of the courses, you'll have a couple of assignments, and then the big assignment at the end will be an essay, and that's usually the topic that you can choose. So I think with thinking back to Victorian Visions just this past semester, we had such a wide range of topics, some more focused in the UK, some focused in America, because students are coming from all over the world. And we had topics, we had one that I can think of is we had an amazing, someone did an amazing study on Native American dress. So that definitely opens up the scope for you to look more geographically, but also particularly if you are coming from further afield from the UK, like myself, you will be bringing with you different perspectives that is really rich in a classroom setting where people can share their own backgrounds in kind of fields that they might have been studying before back in their home countries, and really, I guess, making these discussions richer and perhaps bringing out new perspectives that others might have not considered, not coming from those different geographic locations. So there is definitely a lot of scope to look outside the UK and to bring in your own unique perspective if you are perhaps an international student or coming from further afield, bringing that in and letting that inform the way that you approach the topics. I hope that has answered the question. I might pass over to Rebecca.
I can't really say it any better than you did, Hannah. It struck me right in semester one just how much choice or latitude we had to choose topics that were of interest to us. And as long as they just met the goals, the sort of learning outcomes for the course, for each course. I came to this program with a specific interest in Scotland and Scottish textile and dress history. So that was an obvious draw for me. But we've had lecturers from Italy and from France. I think in both those cases, those were former students who had completed this program in the past, and they were talking about their experiences, putting their skills and knowledge that they gained on the program, putting that to use in different settings in their work in Europe. So I think there's no real, I don't think, any geographical limit to this course, but it does draw, is rooted in the very strong object and collections and resources that are Scottish perhaps first and then British overall, but there's at no point are you being told you must make it Scottish or British in any of your work.
Thank you, everybody. I think perhaps it's also worth saying that within that scope, often the limitations are merely are the more practical ones. So if you're interested in a particular culture, a particular style of dress, a particular era, then sometimes it comes down to things like language and availability of resources. So we try and offer and provide you with the skills to be able to go and research those things. But sometimes it is a practical thing, such as access to material, that might preclude you from doing something like that's based on, I don't know, like Japanese dress or something. If you can't get to those resources, we'll try and figure out ways that you can access and understand it, but it may just mean that there's some tweaking that goes on in how you approach it. But thank you, everybody, for all of that one. I think, shall we move on to the next question?
I think that's a lovely segue into the question about when to choose dissertation topics. Actually, Sally, do you want to maybe go with that, and then I'll do the question after?
Yeah, sure. So this is a question from Thea. I was wondering, at what point in time do you choose the topic that you focus on for your dissertation? So I'll give the lecturer tutor side to this question, and then I think Hannah and Rebecca might want to chip in with when they started thinking about their dissertation. Basically, you can start thinking about your dissertation as early as you like, and we are always happy to talk about early ideas and brainstorm things and see if there's something that you really want to get into, particularly, as I mentioned, if there's something that might have a logistical or practical limitation on what you do later on. In terms of the actual nuts and bolts of the dissertation topic, we get you to submit a couple of proposals from January onwards. So the program is based on this series of development. You pass semester 1, you move on to semester 2, you pass semester 2, and you move on to the dissertation. As you're doing your semester 2 work, we're encouraging you to start thinking about what you might want your dissertation to be. So in January, we get you to submit an initial proposal, and that's really just a blue sky thinking, what you're interested in, what you think you might want to focus on. Do you think it might be an object-based study? Do you think it might be a text-based study? That kind of thing. And that's to help you start to narrow down your ideas, because sometimes people put 2 or 3 in that form because they just can't pick yet. It's too early. And it's also to help us start to think about who the best person might be to help you on that dissertation journey. We then get you to submit a formal proposal, and that's at the end of semester 2. And that's more set in stone, it's more developed. You start to think about what literature it might be based on, what your argument might be, and you start to identify sources. Then when semester 2 is fully over, that's when you have all your attention to devote to the dissertation. So basically from beginning of April to sort of the 3rd week in August, that's the dissertation time. So you've got a good 5 months to work up the dissertation and get it ready. So in terms of ideas, like I say, we're always happy to talk about them early on, but we don't start you to write. We don't ask you to start writing things down until semester 2 time. And even then, it's not until May that we ask you to actually be, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And we have a postgraduate symposium at the beginning of May, and all the students come together and they present their dissertation work in progress. And even though it was only a month ago, it feels like it was only just last week, but we've only just had that for this year. And it was a really fascinating insight into seeing what people are interested in. So it's not just dress history, you get art history students alongside curatorial practice students. So you get a good chance to troubleshoot, brainstorm, talk through ideas, and basically show us what a fascinating dissertation topic you have picked. But Rebecca, I know you have a very different dissertation journey in general. Would you like to explain a bit about how you came?
Well, the fact was, in some ways, my dissertation project topic chose me with an object that landed sort of in my lap about 3 years ago. And it was the main driving force for actually enrolling on this program, that I wanted to improve my skills and my research skills, my writing skills, to be able to give this object sort of the proper attention, to know how to study it and how to then write about it and put it into context as to where it came from, how it might have been acquired, where it was worn, why. But I went through the same process that Sally just described, where you have an informal proposal and is very, there's not very many words, just an idea that you've got, and then the formal proposal about 2 months later, a little bit more than 2 months later, end of March was when the deadline fell this year, which is a little bit more formal. It's almost like a little practice exercise for anyone who might be thinking about doctoral studies, I found, because you do need to be thinking about what contribution you're making to this field, to this discipline. Are you contributing something new? Is it a new viewpoint? Is it looking at a new source? So looking at a source that's familiar to people, but you're looking at it in a new way. And you get a lot of help at that stage. You have some idea by that time who your dissertation supervisor is going to be, and you can work with them to really refine and hone how you address in the proposal what you're going to study. But my dissertation is very object-based. It's pretty much inspired and building on all the context around a particular 18th century gown that's in private ownership. So not an awful lot has been published about it, and that's what I'm hoping to contribute to the field's study of that gown and that context.
Wonderful, thank you, Rebecca. Hannah, do you want to talk a bit about how you thought about your dissertation and how you approached it?
Oh, so mine's different from Rebecca's, and my sort of what I want to say is alluding to Amelia's question actually about interdisciplinary study, and mine is quite interdisciplinary. I come from an art history background, and so originally I had an idea that I wanted to do something Australian. I've never really researched in that area before, despite coming from Australia, and something kind of jumped out at me from the page that really intrigued me, and I kept a note of that. So I'd recommend, as you go throughout the next couple of months, whenever you're studying the course or when you're on the course, just keep a notepad, whether that's in physical copy or virtual, and just keep a record of ideas that you have, and then you can obviously narrow down from there, just so that you don't forget anything. But basically I realized kind of early in January that wasn't really going to work. Not that it wasn't a good idea or that there needed to be research in that area, but just in terms of, as Sally mentioned, like what can be done in the time that you have with the resources that you have available to you. So I had to pivot a little bit, and I'm now working on Punch magazine. So coming back to Amelia's question about interdisciplinary study, obviously that is visual culture, but also draws on literary studies as well, anthropology. It kind of draws on lots of different fields, and that's, I guess, the great thing about dress history is it's kind of aligned with lots of other different disciplines. So depending on your background, you can bring that in. So whereas Rebecca's is really object focused, mine is more kind of art historical visual sources. And yeah, I would also say as well, I can't remember who it was, but some in research methods and skills, the course we did in semester 1, we had a really great lecture, and the lecturer mentioned that your topic, nothing should close doors. There should always be space for more inquiry. And so I would say that if you're kind of worried about the dissertation or not really sure what you would write on, obviously you have loads of time. But I would just say that what really helped me was to think, okay, it doesn't have to always be something completely new, like Rebecca, something that hasn't been studied before ever. It could just be a different perspective on or a different approach to something that already has scholarship done. And it should, good research should continue that. So I hope that kind of answers the question. But yeah, mine was kind of a late pivot, not super late, but it is definitely possible to, recognize, okay, this isn't going to work in the time that I have. What will be possible with the resources that I have and with the time that I have? So that's been my journey so far.
That's so lovely. I mean, just listening again to both of you, you've had such different journeys, and yet here you are in the depths of starting to write your dissertations. And it reminded me also what a privilege it really is for us as your tutors to see you spread your wings and go out there and start your own work over the summer. So, Rebecca coming in very much committed to wanting to work, knew what she wanted to work on, and then Hannah, finding her way and really bringing lots of super creative ideas to the table. And we've talked a lot about your potential project. So everybody has their own journey, but in the end, you end up with a great dissertation topic, and then you work on that very focused over the summer. And thank you, Hannah, for addressing the issue of the interdisciplinarity. You said that beautifully, so I can't really add that much more, other than to say that even your tutors on the program, I think, Sally is a trained historian. I'm a trained design historian, so I'm thinking much more about the sort of lived interiors and material culture. And then Professor Leslie Miller, of course, being a former curator at the V&A, coming at it also from a very sort of cross-disciplinary way of thinking about exhibition making and the role of objects. So I think dress and textile histories as a discipline is in and of itself interdisciplinary, and the way we teach it, I think all three of us, we read widely outside of what you might consider the boundaries of dress and textile history are. And so there's absolute scope for any student to work on interdisciplinary topics in the dissertation, within your research papers, or your whatever the sort of assessments are in the individual courses. And if one felt that that wasn't enough, then we could certainly think about one of your optional courses to potentially be in a different area, although we'd have to kind of discuss that. So all to say, interdisciplinarity, I think, is built in what we do, and this is why dress and textile history is such a rich and rewarding area to think in and think through. Yes, that's, I think, what I wanted to say. Sally, do you want to take the next question about the in-person teaching versus
Can indeed. Yeah, we've been asked if all the courses are all in person now, or if some are still virtual or not. So all the dress and textile history components, the courses as a whole, are in person. We need you to be here in Glasgow. There are, however, within each course, there may be 1 or 2 Zoom lectures, online lectures, and that's the way we see that is it's making something good out of how we pivoted to online learning during the pandemic. And this way we've been able to get lecturers zooming in from LA, from on set when they're a costume designer. You know, it's making the most out of the expertise that's out there. So if somebody can't travel to Glasgow, then we can still get them to talk to you about their subject and about their topic. That tends to be just 1, maximum 2 per course though. So it's not a lot. And there is, as far as we know, research methods and skills is an online course as well. That may change. It's been in person before, and it's been online for the last few years. But as far as we know, it's going to stay online. But that's only 1 course out of 6. So you basically will need to be in Glasgow and face us every week, I'm afraid. So
can I just add something to that, Sally, with research methods? Because I just wanted to stress that in the pre-pandemic time, so before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were really encouraged by the university to offer hybrid learning and to offer more online options. And that's really the origins of research methods. So we're teaching that course online, not because we taught it online during the pandemic. We're teaching it online because pedagogically, even before the pandemic, we felt it was the right format for that kind of a course. So I just wanted to sort of stress that in the context of this online version of research methods.
Yeah. And as far as our courses go, because we want you to be in collections, we want you to see objects, we want you to be working with original materials. So it's face-to-face as much as possible, as much as we can be. Sabina, do you want me to take the next one, or would you like to do it? I can just keep talking. It's okay. I'm quite happy. So there's been a question about the student might have to move back home in the summer when the dissertation process is happening. Depending on where that is, there may be a visa component to be taken into account. So if you are moving back to the States, for example, you may need to inform us and let us know. There will be information on the website about international students and visa requirements and that kind of thing. From our perspective, as a course, we are fine with students going back to where they want to live for the summer, as long as it means that they can still conduct the research that they need to do, and that they keep in touch with their supervisor online via Zoom. Again, another positive that we've tried to take away from the pandemic is this ability to have supervision online as and when necessary. So it's not impossible for that to happen, but we would have to talk to the student, and we would have to talk to the dissertation supervisor to see if they're okay with that kind of arrangement as well. But we'll try and accommodate whatever we can in that kind of scenario. I believe there are some students in this cohort that are going home for the summer to do that. Hannah and Rebecca, I think, are planning on staying here for most of the time. So I'm afraid they probably can't offer much insight onto that side of things. But it is possible. It just needs to be something that's done in conversation with us, basically.
Yeah, and I'm working with a student, for example, who has a topic that is actually making it beneficial for them to be going home, because that's where the resources are, that's where the archive is. So even if they were to stay in Glasgow, they would have had to go on a research trip. So they just kind of folded the two into one. So again, as Sally said, we can talk about that as and when it becomes relevant. And yeah, great. Should I go with the next question? That is about to what extent is the program hands-on object-based, and to what extent text-based. What I'd like to do is just have a really brief word about that, and then I would actually like to bring the question to Hannah and Rebecca, because they've just been through the course, so they can give their views on it, if that's okay. So we as a team are really committed to teaching an object-based approach to dress and textile histories, and that's which I think to some extent makes it so important for us to, or that's sort of one of the rationales why we study Scottish and British things, because we have our access to the resources here. But I would also say that what you call text-based study is a crucial aspect of what we do as well, because I think you can only understand the objects you look at if you have the right methodologies at hand of how to decipher what you see, what you feel, how your body relates to an object. So there is a sort of, the two need to work hand in hand. You can only understand what you see is through those methodological and discipline-specific tools. But on the other hand, if you do everything just in theory and on paper, I think that would be a real shame, and that's definitely not the intention of this program. But I will let Rebecca and Hannah sort of speak about their experience in relation to that question.
Sure, I might jump in first. Yeah, so we had a couple of opportunities. I mean, I didn't take any of the textile conservation courses, but I know that students who did had lots of opportunities to work with samples and garments. But even not doing those courses, we still had many opportunities. So in first semester with framing, one of the core courses, the major assignment is an object study. And so we all pick an object that's housed at the Glasgow Museum Resource Centre. And we get, I think it was 2 hours with the object. And we had to choose a methodology through which to examine the object. And then write up a detailed report on that garment. And as Sabina mentioned, it was, describing the object, but then also bringing in other sources to interpret that object. And that was a really amazing experience for me. It was my first time doing something like that with an actual garment, and it was really, really worthwhile and amazing. And my object was an 1850s dress, so it was just stunning to look at as well for 2 hours. But also on the work placement, I worked with a garment as well. And so that gave me more opportunities to improve my object handling skills, thinking about preventative conservation, learning about how to interpret what I was seeing. And so I was able to build on what I had learned in semester one on my placement. And then on my placement as well, I had other opportunities in museums to have a look at similar garments. So it has been, before I pass over to Rebecca, who has a lot of experience with object handling, it's been a really, really amazing experience to get up close and personal with these amazing objects and to really learn how to interpret them and then apply that in your own work. So yeah, I'll pass over to Rebecca.
It's a great question, and my initial response is the whole program is overwhelmingly both. It's so strong in object handling, and it's so strong in everything that you need to learn and absorb about how historians of sort of all stripes and disciplines, how they work, the theory, the abstract thinking, the methodologies, and reading about applications of those methodologies. I will say right up front, this course is very heavy on reading. I think everyone in our cohort, that was the #1 theme of our conversations socially at semester 1, is just how much reading there is to do. And it's not to be burdensome. It's just the more you read, the more you understand, and the faster you get up to speed into how to be a dress historian and a textile historian, and how those are both distinct yet blended. That every time you're looking at an object, you are looking at it as an item of dress and as constituents of many different textiles that have gone into that item, that object. So it's very strong both, and visual sources as well, with visits to art galleries. The National Portrait Gallery visit that we did in Edinburgh was, I think, a highlight of that semester for that course. It's very, very strong, the entire program. It will kind of depend a little bit on which of your sort of more elective courses you might choose, but just of the 3 core courses that you will be taking, you're going to be sort of thrown in the deep end, but with all the support that you need and all the materials you need to get really up to speed, and by the end of semester 1 be I think just better equipped to be a self-starter, and you've got everything you need to start putting all of these skills into application, putting them into action. I hope that addresses the question somewhat. It's kind of funny that my dissertation is so object-based and Hannah's is visual, and yet she's talking about the object handling, and I'm talking about the reading. There is a lot of reading, and all of it is worthwhile. There is nothing that's just fluff. Everything is important. The more you read, the better you will become at your work. And my work placement involved a lot of the background research, the textual sources, but also object-based, in that the work placement at Paxton House, myself and one other student in our cohort were both placed at Paxton House. And one of our core tasks was to make a gown, an 18th century gown, that will go on display, and to be giving a lot of thought to the interpretation, the sort of the labels and the stories that will be told, and why we made that dress, what it represents, and the wearer, the person connected with the house, and that history connected. So I think every course and every work placement really is a blend of a lot of different approaches.
Yeah, and you also can't separate. It isn't either or, like it isn't object or text. Both go together hand in hand. You can't have an object and be like, oh, I know everything about this now. There'll be things that you don't understand, or things that you'll need to elaborate more on through text-based research, through archival research, through secondary sources. So they really do go hand in hand, but the program provides ample opportunities to strengthen both of those skills as researchers. And it's also nothing to be, if you haven't, I hadn't really handled period garments before, so and it wasn't scary. We had really great guidance. Rebecca Quinton at Glasgow Museums was fantastic, and she showed us what to do. There's also heaps of fabulous online resources from museums. So National Museum Scotland, ICOM, I think International Council of Museums, I think that's what it stands for. But they all have really great guides if you are concerned about that, in actually how to go about handling period textiles, period dress. That, if you are interested and want to start reading ahead of time, they're available, and provide you with that information, so that when you do go into that, you feel equipped, knowing how to, knowing what to do, how to approach that safely. Yeah.
Can I just piggyback on that thought about object handling? That the textile conservation program here at the University of Glasgow, which we share sort of spaces and in some cases classes, you'll be in classes with students that are on that course. The object handling methodology and approaches that program uses is world class and world leading. That students that come out of that program and have learned object handling from the staff members, that faculty, go on to basically continue to shape the way museum handling policies are developed and implemented worldwide. That any museum, if you're behind the scenes studying something, a study visit or museum staff that involves object handling, the sort of, I'm looking for the right word here, sort of state of the art or leading edge, concepts around object handling everyone does look to the Glasgow program as world leaders in that. So you are learning from the very best and the most up-to-date thinking on how to handle objects of all kinds, no matter what their materiality or whatever they might be.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I just wanted to add one quick little thing that sort of came to my mind as Rebecca was talking about the reading, because it harkens back a little bit to the question about interdisciplinarity. I think in part the sort of reading that you're being asked to do has also comes out of the fact that the student body, the cohort every year comes from a really wide range of backgrounds and disciplines. So there are practitioners there are art historians there, so come from a really wide field. And so we feel quite strongly that in order to hit the ground running when it comes to object handling and your dissertation development and the second semester, we really want to make sure that everybody is up on the same level. We all have the same, I've said it before, I always call it the toolbox. We all have the same tools at hand. And so even when I came into the program, because I am part of the history of art department, or subject as we call it here, and as I said, I do design history. So when I started to turn my attention much more carefully and closely to dress and textile histories, I worked my way through all of those readings because I wanted to make sure that I had all of the information and the methodologies and the sort of key scholars at hand. So I think that was really lovely how Rebecca was talking about that and how that sort of connects back to the interdisciplinarity and the internationalness and the different backgrounds of the students that we get, because the cohorts are really quite, every year is a different sort of set of nationalities and backgrounds.
Thank you, everybody. I see that there's a follow-up question to that as well about handling, art handling, and will that be taught? I'm afraid not. That's not really something we engage with, but it depends on where your work placement is and what's on offer with all of that. There are opportunities for you to expand that kind of experience if you wanted to. We also are based in the Kelvin Hall, which is where the Hunterian Museum is as well, and they do have an art collection. There's a Hunterian art gallery as well. So, and they have a volunteer program and I think it's called the Muse program. So there's opportunities for you to engage with that side of things. We don't offer it through the program yet. It's difficult enough getting museums and objects in that way. And art, I think, would give us another thing to try and fit in. So I'm afraid not on that side, but it doesn't mean that the door is closed to you. And if there's something that really interests people, we will do what we can to try and help them open a door in some way. Now, the next question I see is it's more or less a two-parter, and I think it's mainly going to be answered by Hannah and Rebecca, I think, in this one. And the question is, how big is the cohort approximately in this program? And is there a social component? Do the students meet up together outside of class? So in terms of size, we're looking around 16 to 20 in the program, and we've got 17 this year. So we're hoping for a similar number next year, which is a good size. It means we can get group discussion going. We can get into the stores that we want to get into. So it's not a massive group by any means, but it is one of the biggest cohorts in history of art in general. So we do tend to dominate a room when we have all department events and things, which I don't think is a bad thing in any way, shape or form. But Hannah and Rebecca, do you want to talk about the social side of things?
Yeah, it's been amazing, really. We were a really close-knit group of students, and we were really fortunate that that was the case. Particularly for myself and others coming from further afield, that was a concern of mine, is, am I going to make friends? Like, it's difficult as adults, you know, to move somewhere new and to not have any friends. So honestly, from the first day, we all clicked. We have WhatsApp groups. They're pretty active all the time for organizing social events, but also chatting about the content. And again, as Sabina mentioned, we all come from different backgrounds, so able to share our expertise or learn from others has been really amazing. But Glasgow is a fantastic city. There's heaps to do, heaps of amazing food places, heaps of museums. So that there's a lot of activities that work, studying, but also able to have that downtime. And definitely for myself, I was, frequently seeing classmates going out, doing pub quiz, going to museums together. It definitely made studying a much better experience, having that really close-knit social community. So yeah, but definitely, part of that is also putting yourself out there and getting that WhatsApp going, and just being willing to try new things, meet new people, and really lean on each other for support and also for that expertise and knowledge. But Rebecca might want to add more about that.
Just really to just stress what you've just said, Hannah. It's not a given that your cohort will, all click or some click or want to socialize together. In some ways, I think we've kind of taken it for granted as the year has developed this year, in that it's been an amazing group. I mean, we've all made good friends in this group and socialize as much as anyone is inclined and able to do, and yet it's not sort of expected that if there's a group going for a quiz night in a pub or something, that everyone's going to go. It's been very fluid, that we've all done social things with everyone else in the group. And I had my concerns at the beginning of the year, being worried that I was going to be the oldest student. And yes, in fact, I am the oldest. I'm old enough to be the mother of the next oldest student, but she's become a very good friend. And so the support in the group, the friendships that have developed, and the support in terms of study, in terms of when anyone's having a bit of a struggle or feeling a bit overwhelmed, the support has been utterly amazing. It's been an absolutely fantastic group of people this year. And I know that is not always the case. I'm going to be honest about that. But you don't know until you arrive. And the one thing is, you do have so much in common from all the diversity of people that come. And on this course, you have got a lot in common and common goals at the very beginning. So that's an icebreaker right there. I thoroughly enjoyed it this year. I just could not have asked for a more sort of social and supportive and positive group to be studying with. And we've all seen each other a lot out of class, a lot.
There's also obviously clubs and societies as well outside of class. So heaps of different clubs and societies that you'll be able to inquire about at intro week. And so I joined Scottish Dance Society, and that was really fun. And so I had a different group of friends outside of class as well who were equally fantastic. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. You'll definitely find, as Rebecca said, we're all kind of like-minded. We all geek out on dress history together. So we have that thing in common, and it is really nice to be with a group of like-minded people. And, you will definitely find people that you become really close friends with.
Mm-hmm.
It's always so heartening to hear this when you're coming to the end of your academic year. You're like, having seen you all in that room together on the first week, and everybody looks so nervous and scared. It's lovely. So I think it looks like there's one more question, and we've got one to throw back at Hannah and Rebecca after this one as well, which is hopefully a nice one. But and I don't know, Sabina, if you can shed any light on this. The question is, are there any job opportunities within the school that are available to students? I think the short answer is no within the school. If you're thinking along the lines of like teaching and tutoring, that kind of thing, that doesn't really happen for at master's level, mainly because it's an intense year. We ask you to hit the ground running. We ask you to keep going. As Hannah and Rebecca will attest, it's a lot of work. We've already heard about how much reading there is involved. And so it's an intense process. A lot of students do work part-time during their studies, and that is definitely a possibility in terms of things that are available in the wider university, but also outside of the university. So pubs, cafes, shops, anything that you can work around with your studies. So it's absolutely possible to work during your studies, depending on visa restrictions and that kind of thing. But I'm afraid there's nothing within the school itself that we have at the moment. The closest would be looking at the internship hub, which was just flashed up on the screens there a second ago. And if there's anything within the wider college that might be on offer. But so I'm afraid that's all we've got for that one. Sabina, have I missed anything on that one?
No, I think I would have said exactly the same thing. So yeah.
Okay. So just in case there's a final question coming in from the chat, but if not, curveball question for Hannah and Rebecca. What do you wish you'd been told before you came to Glasgow? About anything, about the program, about living in Glasgow, anything at all?
I will stick my neck out and say I came prepared for a lot of reading, but the reading was a lot. It was.
Okay, fair. So noted. We'll put that down. Maybe we should start putting that in the application materials. Will require a lot of reading. Hannah, anything for you?
I don't know. I think for me, I mean, I agree with Rebecca about the reading, but at the same time, like, we don't want to frighten anyone. And I'm sure you did a lot of reading as well in your undergrad degree. But it's more just to help you obviously get your head into dress and textile histories, and also keep a note of things that might be useful in the future for assignments and dissertation and stuff like that. I think for me, it would probably be fabrics of a nation, actually. So I obviously don't come from Scotland, despite sort of blending in quite well. But I actually, I didn't know much about Scottish history specifically. I didn't know much about Scottish textile history, which Sally mentioned is really rich. And so for me, that was a surprise. I knew I would enjoy the course, and I wanted to do something kind of place-based since I was coming to Scotland. But I found that course so interesting. And then it went on to actually inform my work placement perfectly, working on tartan and working on Scottish dress. So for me, I guess broadly from that is just being open to new experiences, being open to new disciplines, to new approaches, to new topics, to new time periods. So the 18th century is not one of my favorite time periods, but I actually found it really interesting going a bit further back from what I'm used to studying, from my comfort zone. And that, in turn opens up a lot more knowledge, a lot more interest, and it really helps me then as a scholar to, have more information to broaden my field. So I guess that's probably one thing that I would say I knew already, but particularly had it heightened during this program, to just be open to learn as much as you can, and reading things from different disciplines and from different time periods as well, things that are outside of your usual scope, and that will really benefit you, I think, in the long term. So I guess that's my answer.
Lovely, thank you so much. So we've run through all the key points that we had covered. Oh, and I see there's a final question in, just snuck in there under the wire. Are places in optional courses Victorian Visions Fabrics of a Nation limited, or is that just the case of the work placement? So they are limited in that the room can only hold so many people, and priority for dress and textile history courses is for dress and textile history students. The core courses, framing and applying, are typically closed to other students because we need to make sure that you guys get the most access to the materials that we're offering. Victorian Visions and Fabrics sometimes do open up depending on how many people take that as that option. So it might leave space for students to come in from other programs. So they're limited, but you would always get first choice on Victorian Visions and Fabric of a Nation. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers the question. Sabina, is there anything final that you wanted to add or say?
Not other than looking forward to meeting the next cohort, because I understand this Q&A is for predominantly offer holders. And to say it makes me almost a little bit sad with sort of seeing Rebecca and Hannah as the sort of outgoing cohort, because they grow close to one another as a group amongst themselves, but they certainly, in my case, grow very close to my heart as well, because we see them coming in, as you said, at the orientation session in early September, and then we see them at the end of their dissertation, and it's just such a lovely and privileged position to be part of their development and just to be part of the group. I mean, every cohort has their own dynamic, but so far every cohort I've taught, I've been able to teach with you, Sally, and with Leslie. It's been such a treat and such a pleasure. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, that's hard to top. So I'll just say thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you for the questions, and we look forward to seeing you in the autumn. Thanks very much. Goodbye.